If you look at any Olympic running event, you'd be very surprised if you saw a 100-kilogram man or woman for that matter winning that race. Probably look at yourself after spending years in the gym trying to grow a decent amount of muscle thinking, how am I ever going to be able to run fast 5Ks, decent 10Ks, or half marathons or full marathons? The truth is it is doable. You just need to think about how you're going to do it, and following these tips that I'm going to talk about in this video will help you massively with that. I've learned from my mistakes that I made along the way, and there was a fair few. And just a bit of context on me. At the moment, I'm around 98 kilograms. I used to be into natural bodybuilding and only doing weight training. I actually said I would never run unless I was getting chased by a predator. I run an 18:23 5K, a 40-minute 10K, and an hour and a half marathon. I've completed ultra marathons, which completely put me off ever running a marathon again, but I will be completing and stepping up to the marathon in due course. If you need help with your 5K, there is a free 5K program down in the bio, but let's get stuck into today's video. The good news is that we're not that special. We're just a little bit heavier than your average runner. So what does this actually mean for us? It means that a few things need to be thought about so that you don't leave yourself ultimately injured. Running is quite a high impact sport or activity. Each step, you're putting a huge amount of force through your ankles, your knees, your hips, your whole body for that matter. And what this does to your body over time is it does actually start to break it down, and this is where bigger guys and girls always end up injured and then eventually stopping running, or they find themselves not able to reach that goal time or pace that they want to. First bit of advice for heavier runners, if you're transitioning from mainly going to the gym, is that you actually need to be doing a lot of your runs, if not all of your runs, at a very easy pace. It might be that at the start, no pace feels easy, and that's completely fine. You'll hear a lot of people talk about zone 2 running, and that basically means a range within your heart rate where you are in your zone 2 range. For lots of people, this will be a conversational pace, but if you type in a zone 2 calculator onto Google, you'll find yourself one pretty easily. Honest and pretty annoying reality of this is that when you first start, because you're not well adapted to running, you're not used to it, your body's like, what the hell is going on? Your zone 2 or your easy running will be way slower than you'd liked. And probably coming from a gym background, you just want to go into everything and smash it and send it and run 5Ks and push PBs every week. This is not how running works, categorically. Otherwise, on that trajectory, if every run you got better, you would be Usain Bolt in 10 years' time. That's not how it works. You need to be more meticulous with it. And by doing a lot of zone 2 running, which, yes, can be quite boring at times, what it will do is it will increase your base fitness. And by increasing your base fitness, you'll find that you'll then be able to do more running and different types and speeds of running because that base fitness has been increased from ultimately when you didn't run, which is 0, up to around 20 or maybe even 30 kilometers per week. That's when you can start experimenting and trying different things. Once you've got a base level of fitness where you go, you know what, I can handle this amount of running. That leads me on to point 2, which is that some level you need to be thinking about your running technique. And of course, there's huge debate online whether running technique is even a thing. But if you look at all of the professional runners, and yes, I understand we are not professional runners, we will never be professional runners. However, they all tend to look very similar in their running styles. There might be some slight deviation, but they're all running with a thing called high cadence. They're all slightly leaning forward. They're all not necessarily swinging their arms an absolute ton. And one thing you need to be thinking about is create these good habits when you start running. As you begin to develop, they will get ingrained in you from the start, so you don't then have to learn or unlearn bad habits later down the line. This is something that I wish I'd done at the start when I transitioned from mainly lifting weights, because I was not running at a higher cadence, which meant that as a heavier guy, each step, because I was probably taking bigger strides, I was putting a lot of force through my body. Led to knee injuries, led to hip injuries, led to glute issues, because my body was absorbing all of that force, which it previously hadn't. So cadence is a big one. Just think about taking shorter steps and trying to take anywhere between 170 to 190 steps per minute. And that might make you feel like an idiot at first. But the easiest way to do this is just put a metronome or listen to music that's at the BPM that you need to be stepping at. Another way that I do it is I go, essentially, every kilometer when my watch goes off, I just think cadence, and I'm thinking cadence, and I'm trying to increase my steps. So for example, if I do 10K, I'll get 10 notifications where I'll be thinking in my head, I need to increase my step. The rest will probably come naturally over time, but you want to be thinking about naturally leaning forward, not just leaning forward at your chest, but leaning forward your full body, and you're just catching yourself and propelling yourself forward. But this will come with time. You don't want your arms to be moving tons in front of your body, and you want to think about being nice and upright. Something that I heard someone say once is that you want to imagine someone's pulled you up through the top of your head. You're standing tall, so that when you lean forward, you're not just getting smaller and crunching down. You actually want to stand tall and lean forward. That keeps your posterior chain working and all your muscles involved in running fired and ready to go. The next one is the one that people probably spend the most time on, and that is kit. As I've spoken about on this channel before, you definitely need to be thinking about a supportive pair of shoes that are based around what you need from a shoe. We don't have time in this video to go into pronation or overpronation or underpronation, or you can check my other videos for my recommendations on shoes. But there's a few things as a heavier guy or girl that I'd probably definitely recommend. The first is you're probably going to chafe a fair amount. How you're going to limit that is by getting some form of lubricant. A word that you probably didn't think I was going to say today. However, here we are. Why you need that lubricant is you're going to put it in areas where you would potentially chafe. Of course, you can get specific chamois cream, but I have, to be fair, found that Vaseline, basic plain Vaseline, does the job perfectly. Likewise, good fitting clothing will help massively with chafing. Guys and girls, I would recommend some form of tight or lycra, because then your body glides next to each other and there is less friction. I have found that when I first started, I was using shorts more. The shorts would then bunch up, and then after maybe 5 or 6 kilometers, bang, you're chafing, you're hurting, and then you can't run as much. Of course, you probably want something to carry your stuff in, so a running belt or a running vest, whatever you would prefer. The running purists would say that you don't need a running vest. However, if you want to have a running vest, have a running vest. No one really cares. People also obsess over running watches. That is completely up to you. That's probably more of a luxury expense than anything else. Obviously, what a running watch does allow you to do is understand your paces, your heart rates, which might help you stay within the zone 2, which is probably the most important thing. But it is a big expense. Don't get caught up in needing a £600 watch straight away. Maybe just stick with your Apple Watch or a very basic watch. And the main bit of kit you probably need is a decent pair of shoes. I say this in pretty much every video. You want a daily pair of running shoes that just absorbs a lot of miles. You feel comfortable, it doesn't ruin your feet, and you don't get injured from it. Just probably go to a running shop and run on one of their treadmills. They'll video your feet and they'll tell you whether you pronate or you underpronate, all of that good stuff. Of course, they pretty much say that everyone needs some form of stability shoe. You definitely don't need a carbon shoe within your first year. The last point, which is actually quite surprising considering chances are the people who are slightly heavier probably spent years in the gym prior to wanting to run. And when you were in the gym, you probably followed some form of program. You followed a routine, a structure, a set order. You go into running and there's no planning. There's just, I'm now going to run, I'm just going to go out and run. And I'm going to run more and more and more and more. If someone did that in the gym, you'd be saying you need a program. You'd be saying, what are you doing? You need to be monitoring it. You need to be tracking it. So the same applies to running. You need to get yourself a program. And the program needs to be followed, one, because it needs to meet you where you're at and then start to transition you out, because otherwise you will end up injured. The reason most people stop running is because they run too much too soon, they get injured, and then they're not willing to overcome that injury. Apps like Runner, they're AI generated, so they're okay. They follow some basic principles that work quite well. From being a coach myself, I've seen a lot of people get quite injured from Runner just because it doesn't take into the personal considerations, because it's not a coach talking to you, a machine churning out your runs based on your running that you're doing. You get yourself a plan, and you wouldn't want to be progressing your running mileage by any more than 10%. Probably heard me say this on the channel. Why that's important is because you need your body, your connective tissue, your muscles to be able to adapt to the stimulus before you progress again. Just like in the gym, you wouldn't walk in and in your 3rd week expect to bench press 100 kilograms, having never bench pressed before. You need to build yourself up and then solidify that strength. Same with running. Build your volume up, solidify that volume, and then when you feel like you're comfortable at that volume or that running mileage, you would then increase it slightly. If you rush this process, you will get injured, you will not enjoy it, and it will result in you going backwards. So those are my 4 best bits of advice for heavier runners getting into running. I've done it myself, and I would class myself now as a runner. even though sometimes I look at myself on these start lines and I look ridiculous, stood next to some slightly smaller people. But again, running is a sport for absolutely everyone. Some people will say like your weight doesn't really matter. However, I do think it impacts how you should approach things. The principles still remain the same, but there needs to be some recognition that each step, each run, there's going to be more impact on a heavier person than there is on a lighter person. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you have, like, comment and subscribe. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments.